that have occurred during the past few decades. We will compare and contrast the main types of economic systems that are found in different regions of the world. We will explain the categories of economic development used by the World Bank and identify the key emerging country markets at the stage of development. We will discuss the significance of balance of payments statistics for world's major economies. We will try to identify the countries that are world's leading exporters and briefly explain how the exchange rates impact the economies or companies' opportunities in different parts of the world. So we will start with the world economy. We just have the overview. The world economy had changed profoundly since the World War II. Perhaps the most fundamental change in the emergence of the global market responding to new opportunities. Global competitors have steadily displayed or absorbed the local ones. Concurrently, the integration of the world economy has increased significantly. Economic integration stood at 10% at the beginning of the 20th century. Today, it is approximately 50%. Integration is particularly sticking in the European Union, that is EU, and North American Free Trade Area. Just 65 years ago, the world was far less integrated than it is today. As evidence of the changes that has been taken place, consider the example of automobile. Cars with European nameplates such as Renault, Citroën, Peugeot, Porsche, Volvo, and other were radically different from the American cars, that is Chevrolet, Ford, and the Japanese models like Toyota or Nissan. These were local cars built by local companies, mostly destined for the local or regional markets. Even today, global and regional auto companies make cars for their home country car buyers and are not marketed abroad. However, it is also true that the world car is reality for BMW, Ford, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, and Toyota. Product changes reflect organizational change as well. The world's largest automakers have, the most part, evolved into the global companies. Ford, you can take a name as a case. In 2008, the company unveiled the updated version of Fiesta that being marketed throughout the world. As Mark Field, an executive vice president of Ford, explained, he said that we have had car with same name like Nissan and Focus, but the product themselves were very regional. This is the real shift point for us, and that it's a real global car. During the past 2 decades, the world economic environment has significantly increasing and it is constantly changing, so it is dynamic in nature. Change has been dramatic, and far-reaching. It is having far-reaching impact. To achieve the success, executives and marketers must take into account the following new realities. These realities are capital movements have replaced trade as the driving force of the world economy. Then production has become uncoupled from employment. The world economy dominates the scene. The individual country economy plays a subordinate role. The struggle between capitalism and socialism that began in 1917 is over. The growth of e-commerce diminishes the importance of national barriers and forces companies to re-evaluate their businesses or their business models. The first stage is the increased volume capital movement. The dollar value of world trade is in goods and services was approximately 25 billion trillion dollars in 2009. However, the Bank for International Settlements has calculated the foreign exchange transactions worth rupees approximately 4 trillion are booked every day. This this works out to more than 1 quadrillion annually, a figure that far surpasses the dollar value of the world trade in goods and services. And conclusion resides in this data that the global capital movements far exceeds the dollar volume of the globe trade. In other words, currency trading represents the world's largest market. The second change concerns the relationship between the productivity and employment. To illustrate this relationship, it is necessary to review some basic of macroeconomics, that is GDP. So what is GDP? Gross domestic product. So GDP, a measure of nation's economic activity, is calculated by adding the consumer spending, that is C. C stands for consumer spending, plus investment spending, that is I, plus the government purchases, that is G, and the net exports, that is NX. So how you calculate GDP? C plus I plus G plus NX. Economic growth as measured by GDP reflects the increase in the nation's productivity. Until the recent economic crisis, the employment in the manufacturing has remained steady or declined while the productivity continued to grow. Now, employment rates have declined in the countries where a bubble economy or misallocated resources in housing and real estate has collapsed. The third major change is the emergence of world economy as the dominant economic unit. Company executives and national leaders who recognize this have the greatest chance of success. For example, the real secret of the economic success of Germany and Japan is the fact that business leaders and policymakers focus on world market and their perspective or respective countries' competitive positions in the world economy. This change has brought two questions to the fore. First question is, how does the global economy work and who is in charge? Second, unfortunately, the answers to these questions are not clear cut. The fourth change in the end of the Cold War, the demise of the communism as an economic and political system can be explained in a straightforward manner. Communism is not an effective economic system. The overwhelming superior performance of the world's market economy has given leaders in socialist countries little choice but to renounce their ideology. A key policy change in such countries has been abnormal to fertile their attempts to manage the national economies with a single central plan. This policy change frequently goes hand in hand with the government's efforts to foster increased public participation in matters of state by introducing democratic reforms. Finally, the personal computer revolution and the advent of the internet era have in the same way of diminishing the importance of national boundaries. Worldwide, an estimated 1 billion people use the personal computers in so-called information age. Barriers of time and place have been replaced by the transactional cyber world that functions 24 by 7. We can take examples like Amazon.com, eBay, Facebook, Google, iTunes, Priceline, Twitter, and YouTube are just few of the companies that are pushing the envelope in this brave new world. We will talk about economic system in brief. Traditionally, economists identified four main types of economic system. Those are market capitalism, centrally planned socialism, centrally planned capitalism, and market socialism. You can see that this classification was based on dominant method of resource allocation, that is market versus command, and the dominant form of resource ownership, that is private versus state. Now, we are thankful to globalization, however, the economic systems are harder to categorize within the confines of the only four cell matrix. Alternately, more robust descriptive criteria include the following. So, if your resource ownership is private and resource allocation is market, then that is market capitalism. Similarly, all four quadrants are there. Now, we will talk about the more robust descriptive criteria that includes first is type of economy. In the nation, an advanced industrial state, an emerging economy, a transition economy, or a developing nation. Next is type of government. So, is the nation ruled by monocracy or triad? Is that autocratic one party system? Is the nation dominated by another state, or is it a democracy with multi-party system? Is it unstable or terrorist nation? So type of government is important. Then trade and capital flows. This is how you can analyze the asking these questions. You can analyze the country's position or the nation's position. So trade and capital flows is the nation categorized by almost completely free trade or incomplete free trade. And is it part of trading bloc? Is there a currency board or exchange controls? Is there no trade, or does the government dominate trade possibilities? Next is the commanding heights. Example transportation, communication, and energy sectors. Are these sectors state owned or operated? Is there a mix of state and private ownership? Are they all private or without control prices? Next is service provided by the state and funded through taxes. Are pensions, healthcare, and education, etc. is provided? Pensions and education, but not healthcare. Do privatized system is dominating in that nation? These questions you can ask. Next is services provided by the state. So services provided by the state as well as the funded through taxes are pensions, healthcare, and are provided, and pensions and educations are not healthcare, and two privatized systems dominating that. Then institutions, is the nation categorized by transparencies, then standards and absence of corruptions, and the presence of free press or strong courts, or is the corruption a fact of life and press dominated by the government? Are standards ignored and the court system compromised? If you are having curiosity, you can Google on the YouTube, and sorry, you can Google on the Wikipedia, etc. There are a number of sites which talks about the ranking, worldwide ranking. Suppose you are saying the corruption free countries, if you want to find out, then you just write down in Google that corruption ranking of the corruption free countries, and you will get ranking from 1 to n number of countries. Also, some details are given in the Wikipedia, you can find easily. Last is markets. So, does the nation have a free market system characterized by the high risk or high reward entrepreneurial dynamism? Is it free market that is dominated by monopolies, caters, and uh, concentrated industries, or is planning including the price and wages control dominated by the center? Now, next concept is market capitalism that we have seen in this matrix. First concept, market capitalism, we will talk about. What is market capitalism? Market capitalism is an economic system in which individuals and firms allocate resources and production resources are privately owned. Simply put, the consumers decide what goods they desire and the firms determine what and how much to produce. The role of state in market capitalism is to promote competitive among the firms and ensure the consumer protection. Today, the market capitalism is widely practiced around the world, most notably in North America and European unions. It would be gross oversimplification, however, to assume that the market-oriented economics functions in an identical manner. According to economist Paul, he remarked that the US is distinguished by its competition or competitive nature, that is, wild free for all and decentralized initiatives. By contrast, outsiders sometimes refer to as a Japan, that is Japan Incorporate. The label can be interpreted in different ways, but it is basically refers to tighter, highly regulated economic system that is also market oriented. Just look at this market capitalism. This is the table where describing Western market systems. So type of system is suppose Anglo-Saxon model. Then the countries implementing are United States, Canada, and Great Britain. Here the key characteristics are private ownership, free enterprise economy, capitalism, minimal society safety net, and highly flexible employment policies. Then next system is social market economy model. The countries implementing are Germany, France, and Italy. Private ownership, social partners oriented that includes employer groups, unions, and banks. Unions and corporations are involved in government and vice versa in flexible employment policies. Another type of system is Nordic model that is implemented by Norway and Sweden. Mix of state ownership and private ownership. Taxes are high, some market regulations, generously socially safety net. So next quadrant was centrally planned socialism. At the opposite end of the spectrum from the market capitalism is centrally planned socialism. In this type of economic system, the state has broad powers to serve the public interest as it sees it to fit. State plan make top-down decisions about what goods and services are produced in what quantities. Consumers can spend their money on what is available. Government ownership of the entire business as well as individuals' enterprise is characteristics of centrally planned socialism. Because demand typically exceeds the supply, the element of marketing mix are not used in stat- not used as strategic variables. Little reliance is placed on the product differentiation, advertising, promotion, or eliminate the exploitation by intermediaries. The government also controls the distribution. The clear superiority of the market capitalism is delivering the goods and services that people need to want has led down its adoption in many formally socialist countries. An ideology developed in the 19th century by Marx and perpetuated in the 20th century by Lenin and others has been resoundingly refuted. For decades, the economies of China, the former Soviet Union, and India functioned according to the tenets of centrally planned socialism. All these countries are now engaged in economic reforms characterized in various proportion by increased reliance, on the market allocation and private ownership. Even as China leaders attempt to maintain control over the society and acknowledge the importance of the economic reforms, at a recent assembly, the Chinese Communist Party said that reform is an inevitable road for inauguration of the country's economy and promoting the social progress, and a great pioneer undertaking with or without parallel in the history. Next concept is centrally planned capitalism and market socialism. So we will study that. Now, in reality, the market capitalism and centrally planned socialism do not exist in pure form, as the centrally planned socialism exists and the market capitalism also exists in that way pure form. In most of the countries, to a great or lesser degree, the command and market resource allocation are practiced simultaneously, as they are private state resource ownership. The role of government in the modern market economies varies widely. A economic system in which command resource allocation is utilized extensively in overall environment of the private resource ownership that can be called as centrally planned capitalism. A fourth variant, that is market socialism, is also possible. In such system, market allocation policies are permitted within the overall environment of state ownership only. So, according to the Long Tu, who was the chief WTO negotiator for China, he said that the countries with planned economies have never been the part of economic globalization, and China's economy must become a market economy. As noted previously, China is an example. I'll just put this table. As noted previously, China is an example of state-directed socialism. However, China's communist leadership has also given considerable freedom to the business and individuals in the uh, province to the operate within a market system. Today, China's private sector accounts for approximately 70% of the national outcome or output. Even so, state enterprises still receive more than two-thirds of the credit available for the country's bank. Market reforms and the nascent capitalism in many parts of the world are creating opportunities for large-scale investment by the global companies. Indeed, Coca-Cola returned to India in 1994, 2 decades after the force out by the government. A new law allowing 100% foreign ownership of the enterprise helped to pave the way. By contrast, Cuba stands as one of the last bastions for the command allocation approach. So these are the examples of the government resource ownerships in Sweden. You can take the example of Telia Sonera. It is the telecom company and state ownership is 45%. Similarly, you can take example of SAS, that is airline company, and the state ownership is 21%. Also, there is index of economic freedom. This is the data of 2011 ranking that is available on www.heritage.org/index. So these are the top 10 companies: Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, Canada, Ireland, Denmark, United States, and Bahrain. And in last five, we are having North Korea at 179th position, then Zimbabwe, Cuba, Eritrea, Venezuela, Burma. So these are standing after 170 position. So socialists are embracing capitalism, governors are selling off the companies and had the nationalized, and countries are seeking to entice the multinational corporation expelled just to decades earlier. Today, politicians on the left admire that their government can no longer afford the expansion welfare state. The decoming of the state from the commanding heights, much a great divide between the 20th and 21st century. It is opening doors for many formal closed countries of trade and investment and vastly increasing the global market. So this was the statement by Daniel Yergin and Joseph. They have summed up the situation of Coca-Cola coming back to India. Also, now next part is stages of market development. At the point in time, the individual countries' markets are in different stages of economic development. The World Bank has developed a four category classification system that uses per capita gross national income, that is GNI, as a base. The income definition for each of the state is derived from the World Bank's lending categories, and the countries within a given category generally have a number of characteristics in common. Thus, the stage provided a use or useful basis for the global market segmentation and target marketing. The categories are shown. I will just first show the categories. Okay, so these are the stages of market development. So, a decade ago, a number of countries like Central Europe, then Latin America, and Asia were expected to experience the rapid economic growth known as big emerging markets, that is BEMS. The list include China, India, Indonesia, South Korea, then Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, South Africa, Poland, and Turkey. Today, much attention is focused on the opportunities in Brazil, Russia, India, and China. As previously noted, these four companies are collectively known as BRIC. You must have heard before: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. So, BRIC. So, Microsoft's experience illustrates the nature of market opportunity in this country. In fiscal 2008, the software giant's collective revenues from BRIC grew 54% compared to the overall global revenue growth. So overall revenue growth was throughout the world 18%, and only in BRIC it was 54%. So expert predicted that the BRIC nations will be the key player in the global trade, even as their track records on human rights, environmental protection, and other issues come under closer to scrutiny by their trending partners. The big government leaders also come under pressure at home, and their developing market economies create greater income, greater income, greater income disparity. For each of the stages economic development discussed here, special attention is given to the BRIC countries. According to Tom Tirko, he is president of Denmark, that is commenting on Ubev's acquisition. He said that in a global market, you are not going to gain your profit by sitting tight in the United States in a flat and decline market. You are going to make your money in China and Russia and India and Brazil. So there are low income countries, high income countries, and middle income countries. So low income countries, also lower income countries are also there. So we will first start with low income countries. So low income countries have a GNI. What is GNI? Gross national income. So low income countries have GNI per capita is less than $996. That is approximately $1,000. The general characteristics shared by the countries at the income level are limited industrialization and high percentage of population engaged in agriculture or subsistence farming. Sorry. Then high birth rate and short life expectancy. Then low literacy rates. Then high reliance on foreign aid, political instability and unrest, and concentration mostly in the Africa, that is south of Sahara Desert. So about total 13% of world population are included in this economic category. 13, 1 3. Many low-income countries have much serious economic, social, and political problems that they represents extremely limited opportunities for investment and operations. So just look at these figures. Income group by per capita GNI, that is gross national income. So low income countries, that is GNI per capita is less than 995 dollars. We will call lower middle income countries whose GNI is greater than 996 dollars, but it is less than 9,000 sorry 3,945. Similarly, upper middle income countries GNI per capita is more than 3,946, but it is less than 12,195. And high income countries we will categorize whose GNI per capita is more than 12,196 dollars. Some are no growth economies. No growth economies, we can take example of Burundi or Rwanda, with the high percentage of population living at the national poverty line. Others were once stable countries with growing economies that have been become divided into political struggles. The result is unstable environmental characterized by civil strife and flat income and considerable danger to residents. Countries embroiled in civil wars and dangerous areas, most companies find it prudent to avoid them. So for investment, they are avoiding these countries where there are no growth or very low growth. Other low-income countries represents the genuine market opportunities. You can take example of Bangladesh is a case in the point where GNI per capita is approximately $590, that is less than 996, and the garment industry is enjoying the burgeoning exports. Finished goods exports double the trade between 2004 and 2009. Buyers include Gap, H&M, then Tesco, one second, Walmart, Zara, and other retailers. Garments represents fully 80% of the total country's exports. The president of Bangladesh and Garment Manufacturers and Export Association expects that the exports will be total $25 trillion in 2017-18. The workers in the Bangladesh currently have the lowest wages in the global garment industry. In the fall 2010, the government mandated the minimum wages that raises from $24 per month to $44 per month. As estimated, 3 million Bangladeshis, mostly women, work in industry. Bangladesh's garment sector has benefited from the labor unrest, rising wages, and a stronger currency in China. A newly independent countries of the former Soviet Union presents an interesting situation where the incomes are declining and there is considerable economic hardship. The potential for disruption is certainly high. Are they problem cases or they attractive opportunities for the good potential for moving out of the low income? category. These countries presents an interesting risk of reward trade-off. Some countries have taken the plunge, and many of the others are still assessing whether to take the risk or not. Now we will shift to, yes, we have seen these stages of market development. Now after low, we will see the lower middle income countries. Now, according to Dipankar Halder, he is associate director of KSA Technopark in India. As the saying goes, if you are not manufacturing in China or selling in India, you are as good as finished. This is the statement by Dipankar Haldar. So, what is this lower middle income countries? The United Nations designated 50 countries in the bottom mark of low income category as the least developed countries, that is LDCs. The term is sometimes used to indicate a contrast with the developing, that is upper rank of the low income plus lower middle and upper middle income. So the developing countries and developed with the high income countries, the lower middle income countries are those whose GNI per capita is between 996 to $3,945. Consumer markets in these countries are expanding rapidly. Countries such as China, Indonesia, and Thailand represents an increasing competitive threat as they mobilize their relative cheap and often highly motivated labor forces to serve target market in the rest of the world. The developing countries in the lower middle income category have a major competitive advantage in mature, standardized, and labor intensive light industry sectors such as footwear, textile, and toys manufacturing companies. With 2009 GNI per capita of $1,180, India has transitioned out of the low income category and now is classified as a lower middle income category. In 2007, India commenced its 16th anniversary of its independence from the Great Britain, and many decades economic growth was weak. As 1990s became, India was the throes of the economic crisis. Inflation was very high, and foreign exchange reverse were having reverse flows. Then country's leader opened the India's economy to trade and investment and dramatically improved market opportunities. Manmohan Singh was placed in the charge of India's economy. Singh, former government of the Indian Central Bank and finance minister, believed that India had been taking the wrong road. Accordingly, he set all the planned economy by estimating the import licensing requirement for many products, reducing the tariffs and easing the restrictions on the foreign investment and liberalizing the rupees. According to the Vivek Paul, who was the vice chairman of Wipro, it may feel that the temperature has only risen a couple of degrees so far, but this heralds at the end of India's economic ice age. Also, Yashwant Sinha, the country's former finance minister, once declared that the 21st century will be the century of India. His word appear prescient, and India is a home of number of world-class manufacturing companies with the global reach, including Infosys, Mahindra and Mahindra, Tata, Wipro, and meanwhile the list of global companies operating in India growing larger. They include the Benetton, United Colors of Benetton, then Cadbury, Coca-Cola, DuPont, Ericsson, then Fujitsu, IBM, L'Oreal, MTV, Staples, Unilever, and Walmart. India's huge population base also present attractive opportunities for the automobile sector. So Suzuki, Hyundai, General Motors, and Ford are the among all the global car manufacturers doing businesses in India. China is the other big nation that is also there in low middle income category. GNI per capita was 3,519 2009. China represents the largest single destination of foreign investment in developing world, attracted by the country's vast size and potential market. Companies like Asia, Europe, and North and South America are making China a country in the global strategies. Uh, Despite of the growing market reforms, Chinese society does not have the democratic foundation. Although China is member of World Trade Organization (WTO), trading partners are still concerned with or concerned about the human rights, protection of intellectual property rights, and other issues. The country's leader must deal with China's sprawling bureaucracy while reforming the state enterprise sector to ensure the nation's export led to the economic transformation sustain. Policymakers have launched hundreds of infrastructural projects. So these includes airports, then cargo ports, highways, and railroads. Avon, Coca-Cola, Dell, Ford, General Motors, Honda, HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, McDonald's, Motorola, P&G, Procter and Gamble, Samsung, Siemens AG, Toyota, and Volkswagen are among the sources of global companies that are actively pursuing opportunities in China. Now we will shift to the next, that is upper middle income countries. The upper middle income countries, also known as industrializing or developing countries, are those with GNI per capita ranging from 3,945 to 12,195 dollars. In these countries, the percentage of population engaged in the agriculture drops sharply as the people move to industrial sector and the degree of urbanization increases. Chile, Hungary, Malaysia, Mexico, Venezuela, and many other countries in this stage rapidly industrializing. We will see the exhibit soon. They have high literacy rates and strong education systems. Daily wages or wages are rising, but still are not significantly lower than the advanced countries. Innovative local companies are become formidable competitors and help in contributing their nation's rapid export-driven economic growth. Russia and Brazil, with GNI of per capita of 9,000 to $8,000 respectively, are the two BRIC nations that currently fall into the upper middle class category. Russia's economic situation improves and declines as the price of oil fluctuates. Strong local companies have appeared on the scene, including Wimble Danfoods, Russia's largest dairy company. However, corruption in pervasive and bureaucracy often mean of the mountain of red tape for the companies such as Diageo, Mars, Nestle, McDonald's, and SAP Miller. Still, the marketing opportunity is enticing. Wages have increased dramatically in recent years, and consumers are showing tendency to spend rather than save. Brazil is the largest Latin American in terms of its size of its economy, population, and geographical territory. Brazil also boasts the richest reserves of natural resources in the hemisphere. Uh, China and Brazil's top trading partners have also insidable prepared for the iron ore and other commodities. Government policies aimed at stabilizing the Brazil's macroeconomy have yielded impressive results. Brazil's GNI has growth at an average annual rate of 4% over the past 7 to 8 years. During the same period, nearly 50 billion Brazilians have joined the middle class as income and living standard has risen uh, uh, in last 5 years. So, needless to say that this trend has also boon the global companies doing the businesses in the Brazil. That includes Electroflux, Fiat, Ford, General Motors, Nestle, Nokia, Toyota, Unilever, and Whirlpool. Then, typical of these countries at this stage of development, Brazil is the study in contrast. Grocery distribution companies use the logistic software to route their trucks. Meanwhile, horse-drawn carts are still a common sight on many of the roads. To keep the pace with the volatile financial environment, in the early 1990s, many local retailers invested in sophisticated computers and communication systems. They use sophisticated inventory system softwares to maintain the financial control. Thanks to Brazil's strength in computers, the country's outsourcing sector is growing rapidly. Former French president and underscored the Brazil's importance on the world trade. He said that geographically Brazil is a part of America, but it's European because of its culture and global because of its interest. So this was about the upper middle income countries. Now, what are the marketing opportunities in developing countries and in lower developing countries or low developing countries? So, despite of many problems in low developing countries and developing countries, it is possible to nurture a long-term market opportunities. Today, Nike produces and sells only a small portion of its output in China. But when the firm refers to China, that is a 2 billion foot market because of the largest population. It is clearly has a future in mind. According to Sri K. Prahlad and Alan Havant, they have identified several assumptions and misconceptions about the bottom of the pyramid that need to be corrected. Now, what are these assumptions? Assumption that is mistaken number one. The assumption is the poor have no money. This is not the fact. In fact, the aggregate buying power of the poor communities can be substantial. In rural Bangladesh, for example, villagers spend considerable sum to use the village phones operated by the local entrepreneurs. Then next statement is mistaken assumption number two. The poor are too concentrated while fulfilling their basic needs to waste money on non-essential goods. In fact, the consumers who are too poor to purchase a house do buy luxury items such as television sets and gas stoves to improve their standard of living or lifestyle. Then, mistaken assumption number three, the goods sold in developing countries are so inexpensive that there is no room for a new market entrant to make a profit. In fact, because of the poor often pay high prices for many goods, there is opportunity for efficient competitors to realize the attractive market gains by offering the better quality in lower prices. Again, mistaken assumption number four, people in bottom of pyramid BOP, people in BOP markets use advanced technology only. In fact, Residents of rural areas can also do quickly learn to use their cell phones, PCs, and various similar devices. Mistaken number five: the global companies that target bottom-up pyramid markets will be categorized or criticized for exploring the exploiting the poor. So global companies that target bottom-up pyramid markets will be criticized for exploiting the poor. That is not the case. In fact, the informal economies in many poor countries are highly exploitative. A global company offering the basic goods and services that improves the country's standard of living can earn reasonable return without benefiting the society. So, despite of the different economic conditions in the part of Southeast Asia, or maybe Latin America, Africa, or Eastern Europe, many nations in these regions will evolve into attractive markets. One of the marketing roles in developing countries is to focus on the resources, on the task of creating and delivering the products that are best suited to local needs and incomes. Appropriate marketing communications techniques can be applied to accelerate the acceptance of these products. Marketers can link that relates the resources to opportunities and facilitates their need satisfaction on the consumer's terms. Now, an interesting debate in marketing is whether it is having a really relevance with the process of economic development or not, and why we are studying this economic development related chapter. Some people believe that the marketing is relevant only in affluent, industrialized countries, where the major problem is directing society's resources into ever changing output or production to satisfy the dynamic marketplace. In the less developed countries, the argument goes at the major problem is with the allocation of scarce resources towards the obvious production needs. Effort should focus on production and how to increase the output and not on the consumer's needs and wants. Now, for example, pursuing alternative energy sources is an important for two reasons: the lack of coal reserves in many countries and concern that the heavy reliance on fossil fuels contributes to the global warming. Similarly, people everywhere need affordable, safe drinking water. So, recognizing the fact, Nestle launched the Pure Life bottled water in Pakistan. The price was set about 35 cents, captured 50% of the bottle market in the Pakistan. The brand has also rolled out in dozens of the other low-income countries. The Coca-Cola company recently began to address the dietary and health issues in low-income countries by developing the Vitango, a beverage product that can help to fight anemia, blindness, and the other related health-related problems. Global companies can also contribute to economic development by finding creative ways to preserve old growth forests and other resources while creating the economic opportunities for local inhabitants. In Brazil, for example, the AG works with the cooperative of farmers who transform coconuts husk into the natural rubber and used in auto seats or maybe sun visors. The French luxury good marketers Harms International has created a line of handbags called Amazonia that is made of latex extracted by the traditional rubber tapers. Both Daimler and Hermes are responding to the opportunity to provide themselves and environmentally conscious while appealing to the green-oriented customers. As Isabella Fords, the director of the company in the Rio de Janeiro, that retains the forest workers. She notes that you can only prevent the forest people from destroying the jungle by giving them viable economic alternatives. So this was about the some mistakes or mistaken assumptions. Now the last part we will talk about the high income countries. So high income countries are also called as advanced countries or developed countries, industrialized or post industrialized countries are those whose GNI or per capita is above 12,196, with the expectation of a few oil rich nations. The countries in this category reach their present income level through a process of sustainable economic growth. That is the reason behind the growth. The phrase post industrial countries was first used by Daniel Bell of Harvard to describe the United States, Sweden, Japan, and other advanced or high income societies. In his 1976 book of the Coming of the Past Industrial Society, Bell drew a distinction between the industrial and the post-industrial stages of the country development, and went beyond mere measure of the income. Bell's thesis was that the sources of innovation in post-industrial societies are derived increasingly from the codification of theoretical knowledge rather than the random inventions. The service sector accounts for more than half of the nation output. The processing and exchange of information becomes increasingly important, and knowledge trumps capital as the key strategic resource. In addition, in a post industrial society, intellectual technology is more important than the machine technology, and scientists and professionals play an important dominant role than engineers and semi skilled workers. Post industrial societies exhibit an orientation towards the future and stress the importance of interpersonal relationship in the functioning of the society. Taken together, these factors and the factors spell the big sociological changes for the work and some lives of the residents of the post-industrial nations. Products and market opportunities in post-industrial societies are heavily dependent on new products and innovations. Ownership levels for the basic products are extremely high in most of the households. Organizations seeking to grow often face a difficult task in if they attempt to expand their share of existing markets. Alternately, they can endeavor to create new markets. Today, for example, global companies in a range of communication related industries are seeking to create new new e-commerce markets for interactive forms of electronic communication. South Korea occupies a unique position among the high income countries in that it is only one classified as the emerging market by influencing the stock market indices. South Korea is the home of Samsung Electronics, LG Group, Kia Motors Corporation, Daewoo Corporation, and Hyundai Corporation, and the other well-known global enterprises as well. So, in place of substantial barriers in the free trade, South Korea has initiated major reforms in the political and economic system in the response of the Asian flu. Even so, the investors note the political risk posed by the North Korea. Another concern is consistent treatment of foreign investment by the government. For example, authorities recently raided the local offices of French retailers Carrefour. If the indices of eventually reclassify South Korea as a developed market, the change would trigger a wave of investment inflows. We will talk about Triad, but before that, we will just discuss about the G7, G20, G8 countries. Have you heard about the G7, G8, and G20 countries?
Yes.
Okay. So seven high-income countries like United States, Japan, Germany, France, Britain, Canada, and Italy comprises the group of seven G7. Finance minister, capital bankers, and head of the state from the seven nations have worked together for more than a quarter of a century in an effort to steer the global economy in the direction of prosperity and to ensure the monetary stability whenever a global crisis looms, be it Latin American debt crisis in 1980s or Russia's struggle to transform economies in 1990s. Representatives from the G7 nations gather for to try to coordinate the policies. Starting in the mid 1990s, the Russia became attending the G7 summit meeting. So in 1998, Russia became a full participation, giving rise to the group of eight, that is G8. Uh, the group of 20, G20, was established in 1999. Uh, it is comprised of the finance minister and central bank governments from the 19 countries, plus the European Union. The G20 includes developing nations such as Brazil, India, Indonesia, and Turkey as well. So, another institution composed of high-income countries is the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, that is OECD. So you can visit on www.oecd.org for more details. Just apart from your study and all, it is not in syllabus. So the 30 notions, the 30 nations that belongs to this OECD believe in market allocation, economic system, and pluralistic democracy. The organization has been variously described as the economic think tank and rich man's club. In an event, the OECD's fundamental task is to enable its members about to achieve the highest sustainable economic growth, to improve the economic and social well-being of the population. Today's organizations Today the organization is based in Paris and evolved from a group of European nations that worked together after World War II. Now we'll talk about Triad. The ascendancy of the global economic has been noted by many observers in recent years. One of the most astute is the Kenichi Ohmae, who was the former chairman of McKinsey's and Company Japan. His 1985 book, the book is Triad Power, TRIAD, Triad Power. So this book, Triad Power, represents one of the first attempt to develop the coherent conceptualization of the new emerging order. Hoffman argued that the successful global companies had to be equally strong in Japan, Western Europe, and United States. These three regions, which are collectively called as Triad, so Japan, Western Europe, and United States. This triad represents the dominant economic centers of the world. Today, nearly 75% of the world income is measured by GNP is located in this triad. Oman has recently revised his uh, view of the world in the expanded triad. The Japanese lake encompasses the entire Pacific region. The American leg includes the Canada and Mexico, and the boundaries of Europe. It's moving eastward. Coca-Cola is the perfect illustration of a company with a balanced revenue stream. About 7% of the uh, total company's revenues generated in Eurasia and Africa. Another 13% comes from Europe. Latin America accounts for 11%, the Pacific region contributes 14%, and North America accounts about 31%. The balance comes from the company's bottling investments. That includes the Otis elevators. The CEO explains the significance of the product situation to his business. Now, next concept is the marking opportunities for the stages. The stages of economic development described previously can serve as a guide to marketers in evaluating the product saturation levels or percentage of the potential buyers or households who own a particular product. Balance of payments. Before starting, we will just have a look at these figures. So, US balance of payment, the figures are from 2006 to 2010 that describes in US dollars in millions. So, current accounts to the 2010 accounts, the source is taken from bea.gov. So, just look at these figures: service credit, service debit, balance of services, balance on goods and services, imports and exports figures. So, what is this? The balance of payment is a record of all economic transactions between the residentials of the countries and the rest of the world. US balance of the payment statistics from the period 2006 to 2010 is shown in this figure. International trade data for the United States is available from the US Bureau of Economics, that is bea.gov. In the Bureau's interactive website enables users to generate customized reports. So you can also go on this website and you can try whether you can have the report generations or not. The International Monetary Funds of the Balance of Payments Statistical Yearbook provides the trade and statistics and summaries of the economic activities for all the countries in the world. The balance of payment is divided into current and capital accounts. The current account is a broad measure that includes merchandise trade, that is, manufactured goods, and service trades. Services are generally intangible and experience-based economic outputs, plus certain categories of the financial transforms such as humanitarian aids, and a country with a negative current account balance has a trade deficit. That is, the outflow of the money to pay for import exceeds the inflow of the money for the sales of exports. Just look at these figures. US goods and services trade with Brazil, India, China. So US exports to China, India, and Brazil. You can see the figures, and goods imported are in negatives. So a close examination you can see here. This shows a record of goods and services trade between United States, Brazil, and India. A comparison of 4 and 5 lines in the two tables shows the bright spot from the US perspective. The United States has maintained a service trade surplus with the rest of the world. However, the United States post balance payments deflect, while uh, important trading partners such as China have the surpluses. China has become the 3 trillion in foreign reserves, more than any other nations. It offsets its trade surpluses with the overflow of the capitals, while United States offsets the trade deficits with one of the inflow of the capital. China and other countries with held trade surpluses are setting sovereign wealth funds to invest some of the money. Now we will see trade in merchandise and services. So this I have talked about. So just we will talk about the trade in merchandising and services. Thank in part of the achievements of the GATT and WTO, the world merchandise trade has grown at a faster rate than the world production since the end of World War II. Put differently, import and export has outpaced the rate of increase in GNI. According to the figures compiled by WTO, the dollar value of the world merchandise trade in 2009 totaled 11.8 trillion. However, as the world slipped into the recession in 2008, annual world trade growth slowed to about 6%. The top exporting countries are shown in this particular chart. We have shown the China, Germany, US, Japan, and Netherlands. These are leading exporters, and uh, US, China, Germany, France, and Japan are ranked as the leading importers. So in 2003, Germany surpassed the United States at world's top exporter. German manufacture of all sizes has benefited from the global economic growth because they provide the motors, machines, vehicles, and other capital goods that are required to build factories and countries' infrastructure worldwide. Worldwide machineries and transport equipment constitute approximately one-third of the global exports. Overall, two-thirds of the Germany's exports go to United Nations, EU nations, European United Nations. Then France is the number one country for the destination, while the United States ranks second. Today, exports generate 40% of Germany's GDP, and 9 million jobs are exported in related. In addition, with the annual sales by the foreign subsidiaries, the German-based companies are $1.5 billion. The faster growing sector of the world trade is trade in services. Services includes travel and entertainment, education, businesses services such as accounting, advertising, engineering, investment banking, and legal services, and royalties and license fees that represents the payment of the intellectual properties. One of the major issues in the trade relation between the high and lower income countries is trade in services. As a group, low or lower middle and even upper middle income countries are lax in enforcing the international copyrights and protecting intellectual property and patent law. As a result, countries that export service uh, products such as softwares, music, and video entertainment suffer a loss in their income. According to the Global Software Piracy Study conducted uh, each year by the Business Software Alliances, annual worldwide losses due to software piracy account approximately $50 billion. In China alone, software piracy cost the industry that is estimated approximately 7.6 billion loss. So, overview of the international finance. Foreign exchange makes it possible for the countries. Okay, foreign exchange makes it possible for a country in one country to conduct the business in other countries with different currencies. However, foreign exchange is an aspect of global marketing that involves certain financial risk, decisions, and activities that are completely different from those facing a domestic markets. Moreover, those risks can be even higher in developing countries such as Thailand, Malaysia, and South Korea. When a company conducts business when a company conducts business within a single country or region with customers and suppliers paying in the same currency, there is no exchange risk. All prices, payments, receipts, assets, liabilities are given in the currency. However, when conducting business across the boundaries in countries with different currencies, a company is thrust into the turbulent world of exchange risk. So just look at these figures from 1992 to 2010, US billion dollars. So US trade balance on the services on merchandise trade that is given in US dollar. You can clearly see in that the service imports, the service exports, good import and good exports. So the comparative chart is given in this figure. So the foreign exchange markets consist of literally of a buyer and seller market where the currencies are traded for both spot and future delivery on a continuous basis. As noted earlier in the chapter, uh, this particular chapter, 4 trillion of the currencies is traded every day that we have seen in the first part. The spot market is also immediate delivery. The market for future delivery is called as forward market. So spot market and forward market. This is a true market where the prices are based on the combination forces of supply and demand that come into the play of the moment of any transactions. Now we still have 30 minutes with us. So, who are the participants? Who are the participations or participants in this particular market? First, a country's central bank can intervene in the currency markets by buying and selling the currencies, and government securities is an effort to influence the exchange rates. Now, devaluation. We talk about devaluation. So, devaluation can result from government action or an economic crisis. Whatever the cause, devaluation is reduction in the value of nation's currency against the other currencies. For example, in August 1998, the Russian economy imploded. The ruble plunked in the value, and the government defaulted on the foreign debt obligations. Many Russian faces the wages cut and layoffs. Savings were wiped out as the banks collapsed. In the decade that followed, however, Russia's economy make it rapid recovery. Real GDP doubled. In the part that becomes import prices increased by the ruble's devaluation situated or stimulated local products. To the extent that countries sell more goods and services abroad than it buys, there will be greater demand for its currency and tendency for it to appreciate the value. Unless the government pursues the foreign exchange policies that do not allow the currency to fluctuate. The international economies, such policies is called as mercantilism or competitive currency policies. So, what is competitive currency policies? This is because they favor the domestic industries at the expense of the foreign competitors. During the past few years, the Chinese government has been criticized for keeping China's currency undervalued to support the exports. Faced by escalating the rhetoric from Washington and elsewhere, Beijing was responded by adopting the policy of revaluation to allow the yuan to strengthen against the dollars and other currencies. Between 2006 and 2008, the yuan appreciated by approximately 20%. Now, what effect a stronger Chinese currency have? The impact in both global as well as local or domestic. In the broader sense, the stronger currency should rebalance the global economy. In other words, the China's economic growth would be less dependent on the United States and other countries continuing to snap its exports. Chinese consumers and companies enjoyed increased purchasing power as imported goods they become affordable. This put downward pressures downward pressure on the Chinese Consumer Price Index, helping Beijing meet its goal of keeping the inflation under control. Global automakers such as BMW, General Motors, Volkswagen uh, that assembles car in China from the imported parts would reap the benefits in the lower cost. Now, this particular table shows the fluctuation currencies values that can affect the financial risk. Depending on the terms of the payment specified in the contract, suppose at the time a deal is made, the exchange rate is 1.10 euro equals to uh, $1. Okay, so just look at these figures. So conversely, what if European dollar contract to pay the euros rather than the dollars? So the important part is your country's economics exposure. So if you want to learn the international marketing, then economic exposure of the country should be studied. So what is this? Economic exposure reflects the impact of currency fluctuation on a company's financial performance. Economic exposure can occur with the company's business transaction results in sale or purchases of denominated in foreign currencies. Diego, for example, faces transaction exposures to the extent it accelerates and accepts the payment of exports like Scotch whisky at the one exchange rate but actually settles its account in a different exchange. When the countries or regions experiences currencies and economic stress, or we often have increased exposure to certain risk, but also often have new profit opportunities. Potential increased risk include, among the other things, have high receivable delinquencies and bad debt, delays and cancellation of sales orders, principally related to the power and aircraft equipment. Higher local currency financing cost, the slowdown in established financial services activities. Managing the exchange rate exposures. There are three concepts: external heading, internal heading, and the managing exchange rate exposure. We will see. It should be clear It should be clear from this discussion that accurately forecasting exchange rate movement is the major challenge for the countries. So over the years, the search for the ways of managing the cash flows to eliminate and to reduce the exchange rate risk has resulted in development of various techniques or numerous techniques and various financial strategies. For example, it may be desirable to sell the products in company's home country currency. When it is not possible, techniques are available to reduce both transaction and operating exposures. Hedging exchange rate exposures involve establishing an offsetting currency position such that the loss or gain of the currency position is offset by corresponding gain or loss in some other currency. The practice is common among the global companies that sell products and maintain operations in different countries. Today, for example, Porsche relies on the currency hedge rather than the price increase to boost the pre-tax profits on the sale of automobiles. Porsche manufacturing all its car in Europe but generate about 45% of its sales in the United States. Thus, Porsche faces the economic exposure stemming out of the relative value of the dollar to the euro, or she is fully hedged. Thus, it takes the currency position to protect all the earnings from the foreign exchange movements. If a company forecast indicates that the value of foreign currency will weaken against the home currency, it can hedge to protect against potential transaction losses. Conversely, when it is anticipated that the foreign currency will appreciate or strengthen against the home currency, then a gain rather than a loss can be expected on foreign transaction when revenues are converted into the home currency. Given these expectations, the best decisions may not to do with hedge at all. The operative world may or many companies hedge anyways unless management is conceived or convinced the foreign currency will strengthen. Two methods: external hedging methods and internal hedging methods. The external hedging method for managing both transaction and translation exposure requires companies to participate in the foreign currency market. Specific hedging tools include forward contracts and currency options. As far as internal hedging methods are concerned, it includes price adjustment clauses and inter-corporate borrowing or lending in foreign currencies. The foreign market is a mechanism for buying and selling currencies at a present price and for future deliveries. If it is known at a certain amount of foreign currency, it is going to paid out or received at some future date. The company can insure its against exchange loss by buying or selling forward. With forward contract, the company can lack off the specific fixed exchange rate to a future rate that immunize itself from the gain or losses caused by the exchange rate or fluctuations. Financial officers of the global firms can avoid the economic exposure altogether by demanding a particular currency as payment for its foreign sales. As noted, US-based company might demand US dollars as the payment currency for its foreign sales. Last line. This, however, does not eliminate the currency risk. It simply shifts that the risk to the customers. In common practices, companies typically attempt to invoice the exports that is receivable in strong currencies and import that is payable in weak currencies. However, in today's highly competitive world market, such practice may reduce the company's competitive edge. So this is for unit 2 or lecture number 2. I hope you have got some points to discuss. Now I will just ask few questions. That is, how you can summarize today's lecture, what you have learned. Anybody can unmute and tell what he or she learned today. So we will do the summary. Can anybody summarize? Okay, I will tell you the summary. Is the screen visible?
Yes, 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 very good.
Okay, you can see the screen. So, summary, we can summarize the chapter like the economic environment is the major determinant of the global market with the market potential and opportunities. See, this particular chapter is talking about some global economic environment, and uh, that is not, I will not say difficult, but yeah, it is that with much theoretical concepts. It is not easy as the marketing concepts. But we should know or we should understand the economic environment uh, before going for this international marketing. So it is part of your syllabus and you should learn this global economic environment. So I will repeat again, the economic environment is a major determinant of the global market potential and opportunities. In today's global economy, the capital movement are the key driving forces. The production has become uncoupled from the employment, and capitalism has vanquished the communism. Based on the patterns of resource allocation and ownership, the world's national economies can be categorized as the market capitalism, centrally planned capitalism, then centrally planned socialism, and market socialism. Okay, can anybody read this? We are just now have to read the summary.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sir, the final years of the 20th century were where markets by a transition towards market capitalism in many countries that had been centrally controlled. However, great disparity still exists among the nations of the world in terms of economic freedom.
right. Yes, you can read. I'm just
Yes, sir, I will read.
Yes, okay,
Countries can be categorized in terms of stage of the economic development: low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and higher income.
right.
Gross domestic product and gross national income are commonly used measures of economic development. The 50 poorest countries in the low economic category are sometimes referred to as least developed countries. Okay.
Middle income countries with high growth rates are often called newly industrializing economies. NIEs. Several of the world economies are notable for faster growth. The BRIC nation, including Brazil, lower middle income, Russia, upper middle income, India, low income, and China, lower middle income.
The Group 7 G7 and the Group of 20 G20 and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that is OECD, represent efforts by high-income nations to promote democratic ideals and the free market policy throughout the rest of the world. Most of the world's income is located in Triad, which include Japan, the United States, and the Western Europe. Companies with a global aspiration generally have operation in all three areas. Market potential for a product can be evaluated by defining product saturation level in the light of income level. A country's balance of payments is a record of its economic transactions with the rest of the world. This record shows whether a country has a trade plus value of exports exceeds value of imports, or a trade deficit value of imports exceeds value of exports. Trade figures can be further divided into merchandise trade and service trade accounts. A country can run a surplus in both accounts, a deficit in both accounts, or a combination of the two.
Yes, anyone can read.
Island. A country's balance of payments is a record of its economic transactions with the rest of the world. This record shows whether a country has a trade surplus value of exports exceeds value of imports, or a trade deficit value of imports exceeds value of exports. Trade figures can be further divided into merchandise trade and trade service accounts. A country can run a surplus in both accounts, a deficit in both accounts, or a combination of. US merchandise trade deficit was 550 billion dollars in 2010. However, the United States enjoys annual service trade surplus. Overall, the United States is a debtor. China enjoys an overall trade surplus as and serves as a creditor nation.
Uh, foreign foreign exchange provides a means for settling accounts across borders. The dynamic of international finance can have a significant impact on a nation's economy as well as the fortunes of individual companies. Currencies can be subjected to devaluation or revaluation as a result of action taken by a country's central bank. Currency traded by international speculators can also lead to devaluation when a country economy is strong or when demand for its goods is high. Its currency tends to appreciate in value. When currency value fluctuates, global firms faces various types of economic exposure. Firm can manage exchange rate exposed by hedging.
Okay, so these are some discussion questions. Explain how the market capitalism, centrally planned socialism, and market socialism differ. We can give an example of a country that illustrates each type of example that we have discussed already. Then next discussion question can be a manufacturer of satellite dishes is assessing the world's market potential for his product. He asks you if he should consider the developing countries as a potential market. How would you advise him? Okay. Then a friend is distressed to learn the American merchandise trade deficit hit of $646 billion in 2010. You want to cheer your friend by demonstrating that the trade picture is not as bleak as it sounds. So, what would you do? So, these are the discussion questions. So, I just afraid that much is there for today's lecture. I will just stop sharing the screen. Okay. Uh, I have to click your photograph of your attendance. 1 second.
Yes, sir. So, sorry to disturb, but please can you just share the notes that will be the portion of the midterm because we are having the midterm examination from tomorrow. 2 days continuous, three exams in one day.
When you are having your exam?
International marketing we are having day after tomorrow.
Day after tomorrow, on Tuesday.
Yeah, sir.
But actually, I have covered only a small part. Actually, I don't know what should I write.
So,
I have to.
you just give us. Is the question paper framed by you?
Uh, what you want? You want a question bank?
No, no, not question. No, no, sir. PPT we want. Actually, the respective faculty frame the question paper for the written examination. So
Yes,
we are having
yes. They
the
told me to set a question paper, but my problem is there are only 4 units. Okay, I have to
okay.
teach the entire subject in approximately 40 lectures, I guess. Okay, generally there
Uh,
are 40 lectures or means 20
yes.
sessions. Okay, so if they are asking me to complete the things into 2 lectures only, which supposed to take 20 lectures, I cannot complete the syllabus of 2 units within
Yes,
the
sir.
2 lectures only. So ma'am told me to take extra lecture today. So
Okay.
uh, are you ready for this extra lecture? I don't know, because I was
Yes,
thinking
sir.
that today or tomorrow I was planning, uh,
Hmm.
but tomorrow if you are having examination you cannot appear for
Yes, sir.
this.
Yeah, so three exam in one day.
3 exam in one day. So
No, but if possible, sir, you can frame the unit one midterm examination. Unit one or unit two. Some questions from unit two. So we can refer.
I will send you PPT. I'm not having any issues. Okay. So just
No,
Jay.
no, sir. I'm not
Huh.
talking about single PPT, but you can just frame from the unit one portion question paper answer.
Huh, I'm understanding that whatever I have covered, okay, in
Yes, sir.
this lecture and previous lecture, okay, only two lectures. Okay, I know
Yes,
what I have covered. Okay, I'm having the PPTs. I will share the PPTs to you, and I will
yes.
like set the questions from those PPTs only.
Okay.
Okay, जो मैंने पढ़ाया ही नहीं वो मैं कैसे पूछूंगा ना.
Yes, sir. That will benefit, sir.
Okay, and just tell me that when your term will end.
Term examination, the day after tomorrow, only on
No,
Tuesday.
no, this entire term semester.
Full semester. May. In May or June, mid.
May, June. Okay. So till May or June, I have to finish all these syllabus,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, okay. Last question. आज लेना है क्या और एक लेक्चर या नहीं लेना है वो मुझे बोलो. आप डिस्कस करो और डिस्कस करके जय
Yes,
को
sir.
बोलो. ओके.
Yes, sir. I will convey you.
हाँ, जय मुझे बोलो. अगर लेना है तो
Yes, sir.
कितने बजे आप लोगों को कन्वीनियंट है. मैडम तो बोली है कि कोई क्लैश नहीं होता है तो आई कैन टेक. शी वॉज ऑल्सो
Yes,
टेलिंग कि टुमारो भी मैं ले सकता हूँ लेकिन आप लोग बोल रहे हैं कि टुमारो देर इज योर एग्जामिनेशन, तो टुमारो तो हम नहीं ले सकते. आज मुझे जय बोलो.
yes, sir.
ओके, कभी ना
Yes, sir.
कभी तो
Hold it.
ख़त्म करना ही है मुझे. आज हो गया तो अच्छा
Yes, sir.
रहेगा, नहीं रहा तो भी तो मुझे बोलो. सो आई हैव टू प्लान अकॉर्डिंगली. सो 10 मिनट्स में मुझे बोलो कि क्या करना है.
Yes,
और
sir.
जय मुझे आप
We'll discuss.
आपका ईमेल एड्रेस भेज दो. मैं दोनों
Yes,
पीपीटीज
sir.
आपको ईमेल एड्रेस पे भेज दूंगा.
Okay, okay. Done.
ओके. ओके, और आप क्या किससे पढ़ रहे हो, आप क्या बुक है आपके पास, क्या है. हेलो.
Yes, sir.
आप
Yes, sir.
कहाँ से पढ़ रहे हो, आप जनरली पढ़ाई कैसे कहाँ से करती हो.
So actually, the respected faculties have sent us the PPTs on our email, TCS and ID.
Okay, so you are not having this international marketing book or global marketing book from Keegan and Mark Green.